Karakia tātou, tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia tātou te tangata, ki te kaupapa o te huinei, ki te kaupapa o te ranginei. Mōri ora, ki a tātou katoa.
Kia ora, thank you. Just some housekeeping. We have on Zoom at this stage Catherine from the media. Oh, Max is here too. Hi, welcome. And not sure who else is up there now. Nobody, probably. No one else? No. And to note that the meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's YouTube channel. Toilets and fire exits. We've got an exit here, an exit at the doors that you come through, and toilets just out on the left as you go out there. Also with the media, it could be that media are filming part of the meeting, and to note that hearing assistance hardware is available in the public seating area if it's needed. I don't believe we have any apologies. And we'll go to the report, the agenda report, with the resolution there. That we receive the submissions report, we receive and consider all 152 submissions, and we did decline to accept any late submissions. Is there anything, Kat, that you'd like to add to your report?
I'll just through the chair note that there haven't been any late submissions to this point. We've got 18 submitters who've indicated they wish to be heard, but not all have confirmed. So we'll just see how we go today.
Thank you. So I need a mover and a seconder for the resolution. Councillor Maru and seconded by Councillor Ellis. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And we move to the hearing of submissions. And of course, we've read all of the submissions that have been sent in, and it's great to have some people coming in today to speak to their submissions too. So all speakers have been allotted 5 minutes each. And there'll be a little bell that rings on 4. So Elaine's got a bell over there. There'll be a little white ting on 4 and then another ring on 5, just to let you know where you're at. And there'll be some time just for some brief clarifying questions if needed. And if we can refrain from a long lead in our questions, a big preface or a little story, then that'll help too. And to note that the deliberations meeting is scheduled for Wednesday the 16th of October, when the deliberations report will come back to us. Thank you. And our first submitter is Les Cook. Welcome, Les.
Cost of democracy was so great with all the people here. I've only bought 9 copies of what I have to say. Would somebody pass them round to those appropriate?
Thank you.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, could you bring it a little closer to you? There we go. Thank you.
How's that?
Very good.
Speaking to the draft cat management bylaw, I congratulate the Tasman District Council on tackling this issue. I'm totally in favour of what is proposed. Cats have been a long-term issue at my property. Neighbours allow free range of their cats that leave their calling cards in our garden. Nighttime mating arias are an irritating wake-up call to the creation of a new generation of urban gorillas. Toxoplasmosis is ever a possibility, being transmitted through cat feces. Cats unload in our vegetable garden. Cats are killers of birds. One distressed and ashamed neighbour told me of her cat, no longer alive, which brought home trophy birds, a kingfisher, and with difficulty at the cat door, a Karuru. Councillors should consider now a requirement that cats be kept within an owner's property. It is unreasonable that neighbours have to try and keep cats out of their property. A maximum of 2 cats per household should be considered now. Since making my submission, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I've just listed future matters that the council will need to consider. In the event of catching an errant cat, what will one do with it? Will there be an outward sign of microchipping? Who pays if a vet visits for identification, or does it go to the pound? What deterrent will there be for non-complying cat owners? Fines? Confiscations? There will likely be a black market for kittens from unregistered cats. How will this be addressed? With the current law in place, it seems to me that unwanted cats may well be dumped in the country, thus exacerbating the existence of problem feral cats. Cat numbers need to be diminished drastically. Thought needs to be given to accomplishing this in the short term. I sympathise with compliant cat owners who will have to pay the price to register their cats. Dealing with non-compliant cat owners will likely not happen on a scale that diminishes the overall cat population. By owners keeping their cats within their property, errant unregistered cats on the other side of the fence will be known and can be summarily dealt with. And thank you for the opportunity for me to give this point of view, which I know is contrary to that held by many cat owners. Yet it is a view from the other side of the fence. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Any questions from panel members? Yes, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Mr. Cock, thank you for your submission. You've raised some good questions here regarding the future matters for council. Do you have any thoughts on those future problems and possible solutions for them?
I think that is something the council needs to address rather than. I have some very forceful ideas, but I think they're best kept to myself.
Thank you. I think that's all from us. But thank you for coming in and presenting your submission.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning, Madam Chair, councillors and staff, and those in the audience. I'm reading this submission on behalf of Lloyd Faulkner, who is a 92-year-old resident and farmer in Tapawera. Lloyd was dead keen to be here today, but unfortunately he's had 10 weeks in hospital and also got COVID and having to look for some respite care, sadly. But I know he's very passionate about this, so I'll try and put the same passion as he would have into reading it. So he's pretty much paraphrased it, so I will read it as it is. Submission on proposed cat bylaw requirements. All cats to be chipped and de-sexed unless for breeding. 2 cats per household. Must have a proper housing of more than 2. Collared for fast identification, particularly in rural areas. Education, redisposal of scat and litter. I think that's probably meant to be something else. Clean up directions on cat litter supplies, as some even recommend down the toilet. Cats are out of hand in places, e.g. from Pop House to the lake, They caught 101 recent year. An 80-year-old in Motueka has over 18 in 3 households, and none of them desexed, and the place stinks. Having lost over 2/3 of last season's lambs that all ewes were vaccinated against toxoplasma, well, I won't pronounce that because I can't that well, this soon becomes a serious problem. Vaccine company had never had a count so high. Why was it so bad? Lots of ducks feeding in my paddocks and living in the sewage pond. It cost me over 14,000 so far and is ongoing. If we are going to be predator free by 2050, we're a long way to go. Let's not pussyfoot around. Do it once and finish it. It won't be easy, but to save our bird life and farming, it's got to be done and done properly. The Jimmy Lee area is a great example of what can be done in an area, but how much has been lost to cats. I wish the council were on this project and hope some good, helpful laws will come out of it and we can get on top of this problem. Thank you for this opportunity to present this submission, and we'll look forward to the results. LV Faulkner, Lloyd. I'm not really in a position to answer any questions, but if you're something particular relate,
Was it Lloyd that came into one of our public forums and spoke about this? Yes, it was. Okay, yep, great. Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Next is Linda. Welcome.
well, Linda start.
Oh.
Just say there was some attachments he sent in which the admin team are going to circulate to the panel.
Yeah.
Some further information.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda.
Madam Chair, councillors and staff, thank you for your time this morning. I'm a permanent resident of Little Kaiteriteri and we've had property there for 20 years, just to put this in context. This outstanding environment is habitat to many species of protected native birds and other protected species such as skinks. Cats are efficient, they're ferocious, they're indiscriminate hunters, whether they are feral or domesticated. They feed on birds and bird eggs, native bats, lizards, weta and other insects. They transmit toxoplasmosis, similar pronunciation challenge there, to native wildlife and humans. Anything we can do in Tasman District to mitigate the risk to our native species is imperative. I fully support the proposals that require all companion cats over 6 months to be microchipped and registered, and kittens to be desexed at 8 weeks as advocated by the SPCA. This bylaw is long overdue in New Zealand and goes some way to mitigating the bigger issue of feral cats and their huge impact they have on our native wildlife. However, I would like to see the transition period shortened from 2027 to 2026. I feel that 2 years is ample for cat owners to adjust to the new rules, and a household limit of 3 cats maximum. And I'd like to see council move towards more controls in the future, such as mandatory containment of domestic cats onto the owner's property. Cats belong to the owner and neighbours should not have cats imposed on them. Containment would help reduce the risk to wildlife, especially at night when cats can roam several kilometres from their home base. In my opinion, containment should be introduced in the bylaws review, which should be within 5 years. Council can educate cat owners about the risk their cat poses to vulnerable wildlife, particularly protected native species, and enforce the bylaw with infringement penalties if a cat is proven to kill wildlife. The cost of education, enforcement and administration should be self-funding out of registration fees, so these costs do not become a burden to the general ratepayer. I undertake volunteer predator trapping in and around our local beaches. And it's disheartening, really disheartening to know that despite all the work that goes on into rat and mustelid control, domestic cats are still out there at night predating on our native birds. I understand the issue of feral cats comes under TDC's biosecurity, and at this stage there's no legislation to enable them to deal with this problem. This is something that needs addressing if the overall impact of companion and feral cats on our native species is to be mitigated. It's really good to hear that Predator-Free New Zealand are bringing feral cats into their narrative as a significant problem. So I applaud TDC. This proposed bylaw is a really good starting point. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Linda. Any questions from the panel? Deputy Mayor?
Just one of them made, Linda. Just the reason around wanting to reduce the transition period down to 1 year. Just wondered what the sort of thinking behind that was, because obviously there's going to be some challenges to get the whole community to do it within 1 year.
2 years. Reduced from 3 years to 2 years. I just think 2 years is long enough for everyone to make those adjustments, and then the benefits of making those adjustments will be felt sooner than later.
Thank you.
Anything further? Yes, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair. This might be a question, actually, on cats. So currently, how many cats can people have per household? Oh, so there's
Unlimited.
so it's completely unlimited
You can have 18, yeah,
or more.
or more.
Thank you.
Have you ideas about if, the idea of containment on your property, about how people would or could achieve that, given the nature of cats?
I'm looking at models that come out of Australia, where in some areas catios are mandatory. So it's an outdoor space that is enclosed. The cat can still get fresh air, it's still outside, it can still have exercise within this catio, but they can't then, they're contained and can't leave the property and then impinge on neighbours.
And you haven't raised the idea of a curfew, but is that something that you thought about or considered? I think Australia do that.
We can
Places maybe.
Yeah, I think we can take a lot of lessons out of what they've achieved in Australia already. So there are curfews in some areas in Australia, in some states.
Okay. If there's nothing further here, thank you for coming in and putting your time into coming to meet with us.
Thanks for your
Thanks,
time.
Linda. Some people haven't arrived yet. Oh, Jessi Morgan has just signed in. But yeah. Oh, on Zoom, I see. Well, I wonder, Mathias, are you happy to go next? Oh, lovely, thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of Tasman Democracy. We are a membership-based non-profit organization that advocates for the interests of the community, and we encourage debate, dialogue, and democratic decision-making. We see there are a lot of bylaws currently pushed through this council, all of them discussed in workshops, with the public excluded, unfortunately, and which is against the expectation of the Chief Ombudsman. So we are concerned about the lack of scrutiny that went into these bylaws, and today this cat management bylaw is the one that concerns us the most. In your consultation documents, these are confusing at best and misleading at worst. For example, it is written that the measures outlined aim to ensure that cats are well cared for. We know that animal welfare is regulated under the Animal Welfare Act, so there's no need for you to do any regulation in this regard. Then it is written, lost or abandoned pets are less likely to be reunited with their owners if they are not microchipped and registered. Well, the owner of an abandoned cat has no intention to be reunited with the cat because they abandoned the cat. And if someone wants to microchip their cat to minimize the risk of loss, everyone is free to do so. There's no problem. But having all other cats microchipped doesn't give any advantage to the individual cat that is lost. If the problem is overpopulation of cats, then again, microchip does have no effect at all on this. So I completely fail to see why microchipping. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. And next, we can read in your consultation paper, there are no implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. Okay, if you look 10 kilometers in this direction, there's Nelson, and they also have a cat management bylaw. Currently, the consultation is open, but they say it gives rise to some implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. So I'm wondering, what's the difference between a cat in Nelson and a cat in Richmond? Or is it about the people that they are different? So here in Tasman, the people have less rights under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act than they have in Nelson. Is this the case? So what I can read in your consultation document makes little to no sense to me, especially to understand how this council came to the conclusion that a cat management bylaw would be necessary here in the district to address a problem. I mean, what problem exactly? So I made a Legoima request asking for the release of information that would satisfy Section 155 of the Local Government Act. Section 155, these are the requirements and procedures that you must follow when making a bylaw. And I ask, quote, what is the perceived problem that council intends to address with this bylaw? And what elements has council taken into account to come to the conclusion that a bylaw is the most appropriate way of addressing the problem? And what are the alternative forms of a bylaw that council has considered in order to determine that the proposed bylaw is the most appropriate form of a bylaw? Quote end. These are all the requirements under the Local Government Act that you must follow. It's not nice to have, it's a must. And the response from your legal and democracy services team was, quote, the information you are seeking in this case is not held by council, quote end. So this means that your legal team confirmed in writing, that's now official information out there, that the council does not hold information that you must have under Section 155 under the Local Government Act before commencing the process of making a bylaw. So the question is, how can this bylaw making process that we are here today, how can this be lawful when you don't follow the procedure that you must follow under the Local Government Act? I don't want to make you nervous. I only would like to remind you of your duty of care when making decisions that affects the public. So the supreme lawmaker in New Zealand is Parliament, and they delegated authority to you to make bylaws, but only if you follow the procedures of Section 155 of the Local Government Act. And I would like to see that this council is not breaking the law when making a law, and in this case, the cat management bylaw. So I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel? No, there aren't. Thank you for your time. Yeah. Are we ready for Jessi on Zoom? She's on Zoom. Okay, well, welcome, Jessi.
Well, hello, thank you.
Hi. Hey, just to let you know that there'll be a little bell at 4 minutes and then another little bell at 5.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Which I assume now. I assume that you'll hear that.
What was it? Sorry,
I'm just trying to work out that you better hear the bell. So we've got that sorted. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kia ora, everybody, and thank you so much for hearing our submission today. I'm Jessi Morgan, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Predator Free New Zealand Trust. Firstly, I'd just like to congratulate Council on taking this important step towards managing cats and cat management within the region. Cats are really interesting because they're a really important companion animal for many people, but they're also really devastating to our wildlife, and create nuisance in terms of defecating in people's gardens, cat fights at night, and wandering across other people's land, etc. That not everybody is that welcome to. Owned cats have very little controls across the whole country. Actually, we're increasingly seeing a number of councils introduce animal bylaws or similar around the management of owned cats. So there's about 25 councils around the country that have some provision of regulations or restrictions on cats. They range from limiting the number of cats any household can have to desexing, microchipping, and some have a provision around feeding on public land. And this is something I'd really encourage council to look at. One of the problems we do have with cats is these stray cat colonies where cats are being fed, in good faith, I think, by people, being fed on public land, which is creating this nuisance of these kind of in-between cats. They're not really owned by anybody, but they're stray. So at the moment, council can do very little about that situation. In terms of microchipping and desexing, which you've suggested for this cat bylaw, these are really widely accepted measures for responsible cat ownership. And we've recently done a survey representative of New Zealand, and 66% of people support microchipping and 75% desexing. And that's cat owners, that's combined cat owners and non-cat owners number. The percentage for cat owners is actually higher. So cat owners know that desexing and microchipping your cat is something that they should be doing. And we're really just targeting kind of a tail end probably of people who haven't quite caught up to what responsible cat ownership means in this day and age. Microchipping and desexing actually keeps our companion animals safe. So what that means is if there's a predator control operation happening in a reserve and a cat is live captured in a cage, we can identify that cat is owned and return it to its owner. If it doesn't have a microchip, it can be really hard to tell if it's owned or unowned. So microchipping is really important for that reason, amongst others, really, reconnecting cats back to their owners in when they move or in natural disasters and things like that. There's some crazy stat that I'll probably misquote, but it's about 80% of cats in the Christchurch earthquake were returned if they had a microchip, and if they didn't have a microchip, it was really low, under 10%. So microchips actually are what's best for cats and their owners too. Desexing is pretty obvious in terms of its benefits. It reduces the unwanted kittens and this breeding of cats, and that might be with other owned cats, but it might also be with stray cats or feral cats. So that reducing the cat population overall is really important. I'm assuming you've all read my submission anyway, so I'll finish there and just give some time for questions and to clarify anything that's of use for you guys.
Thank you, Jessi. Anything from panel members? Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, good morning. I'm just wondering, Jessi, where is the predator-free 2050 strategy heading in terms of inclusion of cats?
Yeah, great question. So it's currently being reviewed, and a discussion document is due to be released early next year, and that will suggest the inclusion of feral cats, but will be open for consultation. So there's two things really in action here. One is adding feral cats to the 2050 strategy, and the second part is actually a National Cat Act, which I know that in 2017 there's a remit from local government to local governments or LGNZ to have better controls around cats and a national kind of cat act so that each individual council doesn't have to consult on it. That is progressing but slowly, and there is some interest from parliamentarians really to make it happen, but that process is slow, and whether it will get priority in this government, who knows.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bryant and then Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jessi. Just a question around, you've talked about in your submission, phasing an approach for existing cats, which we pretty much intended. But then you've talked about once the bylaw is placed, any new cats should have to go through the required process. Just wondered if you the date that the bylaw comes into effect is the best date, or would there be a seasonal date that's better? Like I'm thinking that in the back of my mind, when our children used to get kittens, there was a kitten season. So I'm just wondering if something like 1st of October or November, something like that would be a better date.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that might be quite sensible, and I don't know that date off top of my head, and I wonder if it changes in different regions slightly, just with temperatures and seasonality. But so I can't remember the bylaw suggested date, but say that comes in June, you could then have a 3-month period of kind of awareness building, and then any kitten from September or October could be microchipped from then. The phasing in approach, I think, is really important for those older cats, just giving people a bit of time to work that in. But the new cats can kind of start quite quickly. But I'm not sure. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that question in terms of a specific date, but I think it's probably quite a good approach.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Jessi. Thanks for your submission. I'm just wondering, I haven't been able to find anything myself, but given the role that you're in, and obviously, I'm guessing that you would have been observing what's happening in councils around the country, working to get rid of the predators, what has the impact been on things like rodents, and has there been the proliferation of them in these areas after and had an increase in trapping?
No, because often the target species is rodents as well. So the trapping efforts will also control. So while they might be targeting stoats, they'll also get rats and mice, or if they're targeting rats, they'll get mice. So what we're seeing is an increased number, in effort around trapping, and typically backyard trapping groups are targeting rats more than stoats. So rats and rodents. I'm guessing what you're worried about is if you reduce the number of cats or roaming cats, the rodent number will explode. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's what you're actually seeing in the field.
No, we're not seeing that at all. And in fact, unfortunately, what we're seeing is more people reporting that their cats are bringing back native species as they return, as those species return into areas that we work and live in. So that's a bit of a challenge in itself.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you very much for your submission, and helpful to hear you articulate the benefits of microchipping, and we appreciate the expertise you bring to your submission and our contemplations. Thanks very much.
Most welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Kia ora.
Bye.
Scott. Kia ora. Welcome.
Get used to it, but I was here at 9 o'clock.
Oh, you went alone. Yeah.
Morena. I'm Scott Burnett from Forest and Bird. Forest and Bird 100% support the creation of a cat management bylaw for the reasons discussed in the consultation document. We're particularly supportive of measures to reduce the number of cats becoming feral through desexing and enabling the identification of owned cats versus unowned cats via microchipping. Both these things are really important for the implementation of the regional pest management strategy and achieving the Tasman biodiversity strategy actions. As we heard from Jessi Morgan, there's growing support for cat control in New Zealand. We understand that Celia Wade Brown is preparing a private members bill for a cat act. Obviously the government have their own program of works at the moment, and the cat thing hasn't got high enough up the list yet. But hopefully that private members bill will get drawn. I guess, you know, it feels like we've really crossed a tipping point where there's majority public support for better management of cats. Certainly Jessi's predator-free survey, Nelson City Council's recent engagement found 80 to 90% support for desexing and microchipping. And we feel that we need better cat management to help shift public attitudes toward responsible cat ownership, where owners better manage their cats and recognise the impacts that their cats can have on native species. And that impact is big, and knowledge around it is growing. In Australia, there's been some recent scientific studies that are really, you know, causing Australia to take a much more proactive approach to cat management. So we support microchipping, registration, desexing, and a transition period. We'd like to see that transition period be a little shorter, but only if that's possible. And we'd also like to see a limit placed on the number of cats per household. 18 councils around the country currently have a limit, and that average is around 3 cats per household. And we don't have any particular number there, but yeah, we just want to avoid the situation of, you know, where a person has too many stray cats to adequately manage, too many cats to adequately manage. Finally, Toko, Jessi Morgan's point around feeding stray cats on public lands, we'd like to discourage, you know, we definitely discourage that. Thank you all for your time and consideration of this.
Thanks, Scott. Bylaws are supposed to be enforceable, and how do you imagine that if we brought in a limit to how many cats people could own? I was wondering what your thoughts are on how that would be managed and enforced.
I imagine that it would only be in circumstances where there's an obvious problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't see, you know, if Tasman was to bring in a limit of 3 cats per household and someone had 4, you know, I don't see that needing enforcement. It's just the situation where someone has, you know, a dozen cats or something, and, you know, it's kind of creating a health and nuisance hazard as well as the impact on this, you know, surrounding biodiversity.
So that's your focus around the cat numbers being limited, not so much that we're better off if everyone's just got 2 cats or no more than 2 cats. It's more to do for people who've got 12 or 18 or...
Yeah, where they're not being responsibly managed, or, you know, where there's just too many to be managed well.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Councillor Mackenzie?
Morning, Scott. Thank you. I don't quite understand this issue around feeding cats on public land. So, I mean, what actually happens? I just don't know what that's about.
Yeah, so an example is the Blenheim rubbish dump has a cat colony at it, and people feed that cat colony, and so those are, you know, stray cats, unmanaged, unhomed cats.
So they actively take along what, a saucer of milk or some food, or
Yeah.
Right.
Feeding them every day. Yeah.
Do we have any of those
Yeah.
cat colonies here in Tasman?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any, which is why I didn't, you know, make a point of it in our submission. But that's not to say that they couldn't happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything further? Thanks very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay.
All the best.
Gillian's on Zoom, is that correct? Welcome, Gillian.
Oh, hello. Right, yes, I am here.
Might you put your camera on, or you prefer it off?
No, I've got, I thought I had it on. I'll try and, I'm not quite sure. Usually it comes on automatically.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
here we
okay.
are. No, I've found it now. There we are.
Hi.
Yes, problem solved.
You've got 5 minutes, Gillian. There'll be a little bell at 4 minutes and then another one at 5.
Okay. No, I don't think it'll take that long.
Okay, thank you.
Scott put in a general submission, which we fully support, but the branch did put in a few extra things. Just to point out that cats evolved as predators and our wildlife evolved without mammalian predators. And so we have to keep the two apart. They just don't mix. We can't have both in the same place. And we strongly support the registration, neutering and microchipping, but feel it's important to go further. And we ask the council to start issuing notices about cat containment, so that by the time the cat policy is reviewed again, all cats can be contained on their owner's property. And some owners are already doing this. It's done in other countries. And if cats are contained, the problem of how many people own really isn't important, because if they're all contained, it doesn't matter. And we also question the time. We ask that this cat policy should be enacted by the end of 2025, because this gives cat owners plenty of time to grasp their responsibilities. I mean, it's so easy to put these things off, but cat owners just need to take responsibility. So thank you. That's about all I have to add.
Thank you. Oh, my voice went high. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gillian, just in relation to containing the cats within the property, are you meaning just at night or 24 hours a day? Because particularly in rural areas, I've noticed our cats like to have a bit of a look around the property, particularly our cat during the day. He tends to want to sleep with us at night, or she. Okay.
Yes, it has to be permanent. I've stayed in several places where the people contain their cats by various means. I stayed with a friend in Australia, and she had netted it in her veranda, part of her veranda and part of her garden. It was securely netted, so the cat could go into this area quite freely, into the house or out into the netted area. I stayed with another cousin who had built a cat garden, and she took her cat out to the garden. It had a lot of playthings and shade, and the cat would spend however long it wanted, 2 hours, 4 hours out there, and then she'd take it back into the house again. I stayed with someone else who took their cat out with them on a harness whenever they were outside, and when they went in, the cat went in. And these cats all seemed perfectly happy. They were contented animals. So, but they must never be free outside, because the first thing they'll do is to find the nearest bird's nest or roosting bird.
Anything further? Thanks very much, Gillian. Appreciate your time and your submission.
Thank you.
Cynthia is next. I think your personal submission, and then following that, your submission on behalf of Forest and Bird Golden Bay branch.
Can you hear me, Chris?
I can hear you. Kia ora.
Oh,
I
look,
can't-
I'm sorry, but we have a power cut in Golden Bay and
course we
I've got
do.
no internet, so I'm trying to do this on my phone.
Okay,
Okay?
well, I can hear you really
Right.
clearly. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay, because I can't hear you at all.
Ah,
Well, only very faintly. So
Okay.
this is my personal submission. I live on a 2,500 square metre rural property in Rangihaata, Golden Bay, and I'm surrounded by lifestyle blocks. Since purchasing the property in 2018, my focus has been to enhance the property so that it supports local biodiversity. That includes birds, lizards, and insects. These species are all predated by cats. 15 native birds and 4 introduced species of birds are present on my property. This abundance of wildlife has seen it become a magnet for cats. I have counted 6 different cats hunting on my property, and yes, they kill. Council can educate cat owners on social media and Newsline about the benefits of keeping cats indoors at night, the prevention of successful hunting by the use of cat bibs, which are common in Australia, and informing cat owners about the impact roaming domestic cats have on wildlife. And I have to say, cat containment must become a long-term goal for council. I support compulsory desexing of cats because the less cats we have, the better off our wildlife will be. I support making microchipping compulsory because that will allow me to install a kill trap on my property to eliminate stray and feral cats. And I will talk about these kill traps in my forest and bird submission. What I object to in the bylaw is the time it allows for cat owners to transition to compliance. 2.5 years is far too long to wait. For 6 years, I have seen the carnage on my property. My request today is that the hearing panel support compulsory microchipping and compulsory desexing and recommend that the transition time for cat owners to comply with the new bylaw is altered from 1 June 2027 to 1 June 2026. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Can you hear me?
Slightly, I'll just put the phone up to my ear.
Okay, I'll just see if there's any questions from panel members.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
No, we're all good. You might carry on with the forest and bird submission.
Sure. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the proposed cat bylaw. The bylaw is not everything forest and bird would like to see. We think this results from council having to balance a largely rural suburban landmass with the Golden Bay ward where we have high biodiversity values. This is why it's important council undertake an education campaign alongside the bylaw, encouraging responsible cat management. Responsible cat management benefits everyone: cats, owners, neighbours and wildlife. The proposed bylaw will address 2 of the issues we have with cats. Domestic cats are highly efficient killers of wildlife. A 12-month study of 208 cats in urban Dunedin showed they killed more birds, skinks, geckos and weta than either rats or mice. Therefore, we support compulsory desexing. This will put a halt to the ongoing and unmanaged breeding of domestic cats by their owners. Posts seeking homes for kittens are a regular feature of the Golden Bay community Facebook pages. The recent development of AI traps, that's artificial intelligence traps, gives conservationists hope for the future. These kill traps are able to differentiate between a microchipped cat and a non-microchipped cat. This will allow us to start eradicating stray and feral cats. And for this reason, Forest and Bird support the compulsory microchipping of cats. Golden Bay is overrun with cats. On 3 sites where Forest and Bird have installed trail cameras, the Parawhaka-Oho, Rototai and Collingwood, cats have been filmed predating nests of banded dotterels and variable oystercatchers. I want to show you a video clip of a cat approaching a variable oystercatcher nest. The birds have abandoned the nest and you can hear them calling in the background. Please watch at the bottom right-hand side of the video. So if someone could play that, please. Thank you. You can see the cat entering the variable oystercatcher nest, and it ate the 2 eggs that were in that nest. So Forest and Bird are asking you for 4 outcomes today. Support compulsory desexing, support compulsory microchipping, bring forward the transition time for compliance to 1 June 2026, and please educate cat owners about responsible cat ownership. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Cynthia. We've got a question here from Councillor Maru.
Okay.
Thanks, Cynthia. I'll use my loud voice. Just the video we just saw, so I must have missed it. Do cats eat eggs?
Oh, yes, they do. Yes, they eat eggs, they eat chicks, and they eat adult birds. And we've had them predating a banded dotterel nest in the Parawhaka-Oho, and you can see the cat clearly going into the nest and eating the banded dotterel eggs. These are most likely feral cats, and don't ever be surprised at the size of them. They do very well. I always imagined feral cats would be quite sort of scrappy looking and not very plump. But you can see that some of them reach weights that are quite unbelievable.
Thank you. And there's a question from Councillor McKenzie.
Good morning, Cynthia. Thank you. Could you give me a bit more information about these AI kill traps? So am I assuming that this is a trap that has animal ethics approval, that a cat can go in and through AI, it can work out if it's microchipped, and if it isn't, it kills the cat?
That's absolutely right. And they've had NAWAC approval. That's the National Advisory, Welfare Advisory Committee. And they are in operation in some parts of New Zealand now. So when the cat goes into the trap, there's a camera, an AI camera, and it can actually identify any particular predator. Like it can say, oh, this is a stoat, I'll kill it. This is a rat, I'll kill it. This is a non-microchipped cat, I will kill it. And so this is the kind of thing that is giving conservationists hope for the future and a way of eradicating feral and stray cats, non-owned cats and non-microchipped cats.
Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor Bryant has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cynthia, I thought I heard you say during your verbal submission this morning, Golden Bay is overrun with cats. Were you referring to domestic cats or feral cats? And if it is feral cats, how are we going to
Well, of course,
control
Stuart, we can't tell. What we're doing is picking them up on cameras and then, you know, from my own situation, picking them up on my property. So we don't have any way of identifying, whether they're owned cats. I do know that I have roaming domestic cats on my property. I know who owns them.
I'm just not sure what to ask next, actually. So do you see feral cats as being a problem as well?
Oh, definitely. Yes, yes. I suspect that the cats we film at our 7 shorebird sites are feral. We do have instances where we've had a domestic cat, an owner has phoned me, it's taken home, a native species, a shorebird, and he's wondered what to do with it. So we do have predation by domestic cats on our shorebirds, but I'd say in the more isolated locations where our shorebird sites are the most likely feral cats or strays.
Thanks, Cynthia. How much does an AI track cost?
At the moment, around $750.
Yeah. Are they widely used in some areas?
Not at the moment, because until councils actually microchip cats, it's not safe to use them.
Yeah. We've heard today there's 18 councils, I think, that have brought in a bylaw. Okay. I think that's all. Thanks very much for your time contributing to this process.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone else. Bye.
Good up. Yeah.
I'm going to try and leave the meeting.
Sophie's online.
Hi there.
Kia Sophie.
Kia ora.
Have you got a camera?
I have, and I've got it clicked on, but for some reason it's not working. It does do that every now and again, I'm afraid. I'm in Golden Bay as well. Maybe it's an issue there. I don't work the same what Cynthia had.
That'll be it.
Now I'm just here representing Chris, who did the submission on behalf of Project Divine. So he's just given me something to read out. I hope if you have any questions, I may be able to answer them, but otherwise I'll just read his submission. Project Divine would prefer to see a stronger bylaw than the proposed draft, and we have asked for 2 additions to the bylaw. However, we recognise that the draft bylaw that the council has put before us is a good first step. Cat owners, cat control regulations and cat management have an important role to play in protecting some of our special wildlife. Therefore, Project Divine supports promotion and regulation of responsible domestic cat ownership, particularly the desexing of all domestic cats prior to reaching 6 months of age, microchipping of all domestic cats prior to reaching 6 months of age, and registration of all domestic cats on the National Companion Animal Register. Project Divine also supports the inclusion of registered breeders from desexing cats kept for breeding purposes. We are asking for 2 additions to the bylaw. Project Divine would like to see the length of the proposed transition time for complying with the bylaw shortened, and ask that the transition time be altered to the 1st of June 2026. The Nikki MacArthur report, Management Issues and Options for Coastal Birds in the Tasman District, commissioned by Council, states, although no feral cat depredation figures are available for any breeding populations of coastal birds in the Tasman District, feral cats are ubiquitous in coastal habitats. This being the case, we consider it highly likely that the ground nesting coastal birds in the Tasman District will be experiencing similarly high feral cat depredation rates to those observed in similar habitats elsewhere in the country. Both solitary and colony ground nesting coastal bird species are likely to be equally at risk of depredation by feral cats. Cats are a serious predator of ground nesting birds here in Golden Bay. Our trap monitoring with cameras has shown cats inspecting our devices. Project Divine requests an additional clause in the cat management bylaw to allow for the elimination of feral, non-microchipped cats after the 1st of June 2026. Conservationists must be permitted the right to remove these predators from our community. Golden Bay has a serious feral cat problem, and many of our precious taonga species are vulnerable to cat predation. On behalf of our trustees, that's it. Yeah. So I'm assuming you've read his submission and seen our trapping systems, networks that we've been setting up in the bay. So some of that, what he talks about in there is about that as far as our cameras. So we have cameras around the grove. We have caught some feral cats as well in some of our traps. And they certainly are an issue, as Cynthia said as well.
Are those traps kill traps?
Some are, some aren't. I think the ones that they've been caught in have been 80-220s. I can't give you an exact figure at the moment as to how many we've caught, but I know that some have been caught. And we have a number of cameras around our traps as well, and they've caught feral cats around the area.
Thank you. I'll just set for some questions from panel members. Chris has produced a good submission there, and we certainly have all read that. Thanks for your time, Sophie.
Great. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
I see here Abby Langford was going to join us for Community Board, but no power. Is Christine with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, kia ora.
Hi, everyone.
There'll be a little bell ring at 4 minutes, Christine, and then another one at 5.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks for having me. It's good to be here again in front of council to discuss our support of a bylaw that would require cats to be desexed and microchipped in the district. You have our submission, so I'm not going to dwell on the details, except again, we urge council to set this age younger at 4 months instead of 6 months. Cats can enter puberty well before 6 months. So if we're trying to really reduce the number of unplanned litters of kittens, 4 months is going to be a lot more successful. And increasingly, we're seeing a trend with councils setting this age earlier. It is a healthy, there's no difference in health outcomes for kittens to be desexed at 4 months versus 6 months. I just want to point out, we support this bylaw. From our organization's point of view, we are seeing an increasing number of kittens that are entering our center, especially from last year. The number has doubled. Importantly for the Tasman area, most of the time, our kitten numbers are driven by the stray kitten population. We call this kitten season. It happens every year, and this impacts other rescues. But in the Tasman area, we see a very high number of kittens coming from what we call owner surrender. So this is where these are kittens born to a companion cat, and oftentimes the details behind these kittens brought into our center is that the owner just had not gotten their kitten desexed or their cat desexed yet, or they can't afford it. So we do see a need for more targeted support, but also more emphasis placed on the importance of desexing companion cats in Tasman. Of course, SPCA, we're currently running a snip and chip in the area. It's very important that any bylaw is accompanied with supporting community members, because cost is by far the biggest reason why people are not desexing their cats and kittens and microchipping them. This is not an urban rural issue from our point of view. All domestic cats should be microchipped and desexed, especially in rural areas where there's potentially pest operation controls happening. A microchip could help us better reunite a lost or trapped cat with their family. And importantly, I don't have the data for you, but it has been shared with us from Companion Animal New Zealand. They are the organization that runs the Companion Animal Register. This is where people will register their animal once they've been microchipped. This is the charity-based private organization. And that there are trends in this country when we see local bylaws passed requiring microchipping and desexing, we see an increase in the number of new cats registered on the Companion Animal Register. So it does matter. Even just announcing there's a consultation and passing the bylaw gets this point out that people can do this, and it's a good thing to do, and it prompts people to do this behavior. And then, of course, by the time it's enforced, we're already seeing an increasing number of people registering their cats. With that, I'm happy to leave time for any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Christine. Councillor Maru has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Christine. So the cost to microchip and desex currently, and the partnership with the SNP and whatever it's called with SPCA, is there a commitment from the SPCA going forward to continue with that program and that support? Or if the bylaw kicked in, would it just be expected it becomes a council problem?
Of course, we're happy to work with councils, but no, we see this as a community problem. The bylaw is the sharp end of the stick. We're here to support people who need help. So the bylaws don't dictate where we have our snip and we call it snip and chip. So the chip is the microchip, our snip and chip campaigns. Of course, we have councils that work with us and they financially help in this space, but it's not a determinant of where we have the campaigns.
And is there a specific part that SPCA play if there's a feral cat colony? Do they assist? Do they partner? Do you have any, what do you do in that space?
So we define feral cats as cats living in a wild state. We do not work with feral cats. We recognize they need to be managed, but they need to be managed humanely. The cats you're referring to, we refer to as stray. And so you could have cats living in a stray cat colony. We currently help people who want to desex a cat and they take ownership, not official ownership, but they take a guardianship like approach to it, that they're willing to look out and for this cat provide care. But we do not support this in areas that are designated often by councils as ecologically sensitive sites. So areas that would be animals are quite vulnerable to cat predation. But at this point, we are not working specifically with a colony in the sense that this is a managed group of cats, that there's a person in charge of them. They're tracking who these cats are. They're dissexing them, microchipping them potentially, but we don't currently do that in Tasman.
And just my final one, somewhere in the submissions, there was a submitted that commented on the SPCA's involvement in desexing and releasing stray or feral cats back out to where they were found. Is that common practice? Is that, I can't remember if I've read it. You've read it. So did you get the question? So there's a submitter in terms of this process has said that SPCA has been involved in desexing stray or feral cats and then just releasing them back to where they were taken. So whilst it stops the breeding, it doesn't necessarily stop the predator issue. So is that common practice?
I can't speak to how common it is. Our center works with Nelson in terms of helping them in certain situations. So the local government, if they have stray cats that they're managing, we may help assist to see if they're social. If they're social, we will help rehome these cats. Where cats, we don't consider it releasing. We would call it returning them to where they came because we don't want it. It would not be humane to just take a cat and move them somewhere else. And we certainly don't support this near areas where sensitive wildlife are found. I think we may have situations, again, I'm sorry, I can't speak to how common it is, where an individual is living in an area and there is a stray cat and they want this cat desexed. And yeah, it's not ideal in terms of from a conservation point of view. We understand that returning cats that have been desexed back to where they come can still predate. However, this is a long-term strategy. For that situation, for that specific cat, they can no longer contribute to the number of unplanned or unwanted kittens born. So it's not part of a broader strategy. It's an ad hoc one-off approach, but for the goal of getting that particular cat desexed, it does work.
Thank you.
I think, hi Christine, Chris Hill here, chairing the panel. I think there are cases at home in Golden Bay where there are people who are particularly involved in trapping stray cats, taking them to SPCA for desexing, making them friendly, and then finding them homes. So I think this is a part of the point of what Brent was raising. Is that, I know you can't speak for all the SPCA centres in New Zealand, but do you think that's a good practice in principle for SPCA to be involved in?
It's a tricky one. Stray cats are incredibly complex. We know there's no approach that satisfies everyone. We are happy to work where we can when we can find homes for stray cats. Stray cats can be lost companion animals. We have to keep this in mind. So there is a proportion of them that are socialized with humans and they can make a good companion cat. So where we can help, and this is really contingent on that local center having the capacity to do so, a healthy stray adult cat is not considered one of our top priorities because we have to consider it's animals that are injured, super young kittens that wouldn't survive on their own, really old cats, sick cats, and also cats that might be seized in one of our inspectorate cases. We have to make sure we have the capacity to care for these groups because we consider these to be the most vulnerable to welfare harm. The adult healthy stray cat is lower on that list. And so some of our centers have the capacity to work more in this space and have the physical space to take the time and resources to rehome adult stray cats. We think this is a good thing. We want to have multiple options for the stray cat in our community. However, we also know this is not, this doesn't work across the board for all our centers. Some centers are full up with other issues. So where that works, we think this is positive. I think where it gets really tricky, and I don't have an easy answer for you, is what do you do with the unsocialized healthy adult stray cat? And at this point, where we can work with people who are willing to take some kind of responsibility for that cat, and it is not in areas that we consider to be, or that we recognize council considers to be sensitive wildlife areas, then we're willing to work with those people. And at least for that specific cat in that situation, get them desexed to stop this cycle of unwanted kittens being born each year.
Thank you. There's another question for you.
Thanks, Christine. So that's my last one. I guess it's probably an unfair question, but if our bylaw went further that said that any stray or feral cat that was caught was euthanized, would the SPCA oppose that?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure we would oppose that. Certainly with feral cats, we recognize the need to manage them. And we have a position on this. We recognize that often includes killing them. We advocate it must be humane how they're killed. When it comes to stray cats, we would push back on not assessing that cat as being potentially rehomable, so that there is some process to determine if the cat is socialized. This is common sense. You could be trapping a cat that belongs to someone. And I think most conservation groups, most people I talk to don't want to be killing people's cats. Yeah, it's a problem that cat is in that area, but the default to just kill them, a cat that you find in a trap, I think is a different question. And I think we would push back on if there was no process to determine if that's a socialized cat or not, or that if it's young enough and it can be socialized, and have more options for the humane management of stray cats.
Thank you.
Sorry, one last thing. If you haven't seen, the Wellington City Council does have a provision in their most recent bylaw that they've updated. There is a point in their bylaw related to stray cat management, if you wanted an example of where another local council has added some stray cat stuff into their bylaw.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for presenting and providing your submission to our process here. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Kia ora. That brings us to the end of people giving their verbal submissions. If there's nothing further here, Kat, is there something that you'd like to? No power in Golden Bay, so Grant and Gillian. Yeah. That's all? Okay, that leaves us to close the meeting. Thank you, staff, for your all your work in preparing this process and information for us and for the community. And just another reminder about deliberations meetings on Wednesday the 16th of October, when we'll receive the deliberations report. I'll close today's meeting with a karakia. Tawhiri mai ngā hua o te tai ao, mai a papatua nuku e tākoto nei. Kia rangi nui e tū iho nei, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, nui e, tae ki e. Thank you, everybody.